Hello, you perfectly lovely little people. My name is Sarah, and I'm going to read you a story from Peter Pan and Wendy by JM Barrie. It's called The Children Escape. It was beautifully light in the nursery, for Wendy had turned the light up when she was still sewing Peter's shadow on. She and he were still sitting, all comfy and cosy, in the big armchair, and the next thing Wendy wanted to know was why he was so fond of coming to the window. She thought, of course, it was to see her, perhaps to get a little sewing and mending done. But she was quite mistaken. Peter was a truthful person, but rather a heartless one too, so he told her, though he could see that she was disappointed. He came to listen to stories. The stories Mrs. Darling told the children at bedtime. He said, "You see, I don't know any stories. No more do any of the Lost Boys. Nobody's ever told us any." Wendy thought that was perfectly awful. Peter went on, "So I come here to pick up any odds and ends of stories that I hear. The bother is, I never hear them right through to the end. Oh, Wendy, your mother was telling you such a beautiful story last night that I came." "And what was it about?" "It was about a prince who couldn't find a lady who wore a glass slipper." "Oh, Peter," said Wendy, quite excited. "That was the story of Cinderella. And the prince did find her in the end, and they lived happily ever after." Peter was very pleased to hear this. He jumped up and he rushed to the window. Wendy cried, "Wherever are you going?" "Why, to tell the other boys." "Oh, no, Peter, don't go yet," said Wendy. "I know lots of other stories. Oh, what heaps of stories I could tell you." Peter came back with a greedy look in his eyes. "Come along," he ordered. He gripped hold of Wendy and began pulling her towards the window. "Let me go," said Wendy, wriggling. "But I want you to come back with me and tell us stories. You can be like sort of a mother for us," said Peter. Well, Wendy was pleased at being asked, but she replied, "But I can't. Whatever would my mummy say? And I can't fly either." "I'll teach you," said Peter. "We'll just jump on the back of the wind, that's all, and away we go." "Oh, how lovely. And you could go on flying about amongst the stars with me instead of being asleep on a silly bed. Such fun. And when we get to Neverland, there are mermaids and fairies and..." Peter was about to say pirates, but he thought it better not to mention them. He had an idea that girls were easily frightened, so he went on. "Yes, Wendy, and you could tuck us in each night, the way that your mother does, and darn our stockings and tell us all the stories that we've never heard. Be splendid!" "Ooh," said Wendy. "Yes, of course, it would be splendid. But would you teach Michael and John to fly so that they can come too?" "If you like," said Peter. He didn't really care about Michael and John, so Wendy shook her brothers and woke them up. "Peter Pan is here," she cried. "He's going to teach us to fly." The two boys were wide awake in a moment, but Peter made a sign to them to be silent. John cried, "Turn out the lights." They listened in the dark. There wasn't a sound to be heard. Even Nana, who had been barking miserably all evening, was very quiet now. But Peter, whose ears were very sharp, heard footsteps in the distance. It was like this. Nana's barking had so much annoyed the little maid Liza, who was mixing Christmas puddings in the kitchen, that she got all muddled between the suet and the sugar, and the raisins and the currants, and she put too much of one thing and too little of another. At last she became very cross, and she fetched Nana indoors and took her upstairs to the nursery. "There you are, silly," she said to Nana. "You see, there's nothing at all to bark about. They're all breathing sweetly in their beds." But Liza little knew that the sweet breathing was behind the window curtains, where the three children and Peter were hiding. "Now then, Nana, no more of this nonsense," said Liza severely. "If you bark any more, I shall go and fetch Master and Mrs. from the party, and then you'll catch it." She took Nana away. "That's all right," said John, coming out from the window curtains. I say, Peter, how do you fly?" Peter flew gracefully around the room to show how easy it was. "Oh, how topping!" cried the boys. "How sweet!" said Wendy. "Yes, I am sweet," said Peter in his conceited way. They tried to imitate him, but they couldn't fly a bit until Peter blew some fairy dust on each of them. He told them, "All you do is think lovely, wonderful thoughts and wriggle your shoulders and let go." They found the lovely, wonderful thoughts rather a bother. She can't really think of any all of a sudden like that. But they wriggled and they let go, and the fairy dust did the rest. In half a minute, the three little darlings were fluttering around and round the room with their heads bobbing against the ceiling. It was glorious. And when John found he really could fly and that there were pirates in the Neverland, he made up his mind that he must see them. There was no time to lose. He seized his Sunday hat, looked rather funny alongside all his night clothes, and he cried, "Let's be off at once." "Yes, let's," cried everyone else. The stars, who were watching and waiting to see what would happen, immediately blew the window open. Meanwhile, it was about 10 minutes since Nana was fastened up in the yard, and she was sure that there was something wrong in the nursery. She could feel that all her dear little charges were in danger, and yet what could she do? There was no good barking, that was a plan. So she went on pulling and straining at her chain with all her might and main, and at last it broke. Mr. and Mrs. Darling were horrified to see her bursting in to where they were at the party, dragging her broken chain and throwing it up in her paws. They left number 27 in quite a fright and followed Nana into the street. Just fancy how startled and shocked they were when they looked up at their own nursery window and saw that the room was full of light, and that there were 4 shadows on the curtains. Shadows of little figures, flying round and round and up and down and to and fro. Yes, flying! Goodness me, what were they? Were they dreaming or what? They were trembling with fear as they opened the street door and ran upstairs as softly as possible. They might perhaps have been in time if they had gone faster. Perhaps, but I don't think so. As they reached the nursery door, Nana gave a great sad howl, for she could hear things better than Mr. and Mrs. Darling, and somehow she knew that the window had opened just that minute, and 4 little people had gone flying out into the night. Tinker Bell made 5, of course, but we don't count her because she was so small, and she was quite disagreeable. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope you've all cleaned your teeth and washed your hands. Now I want you to snuggle in, and I want you to give yourself a great big cuddle. Night, night, little ones. Sleep tight.